In this video is an overview of Vice President Harris's background, experience, character, and why she is so much more qualified to be President of the United States than the guy running against her. Please watch this video.
Kamala Harris just stepped up to the mic, and what happened next left everyone buzzing.
But Donald Trump wants to take our country back.
With a mix of sharp wit and undeniable confidence, she's taking the conversation to a whole new level. What did she say? Well, let's just say Trump won't be forgetting this one anytime soon. Kamala's speech, a scathing indictment of Trump's failures. Kamala Harris didn't just step onto the stage for her first major campaign speech. She charged in with all the energy and determination of someone who's been waiting for this moment.
As we welcome the next president and vice president of the United States to the Chippewa Valley. Vice President.
The crowd gathered in Wisconsin was electric, buzzing with anticipation for what was about to be one of the most talked about speeches of the campaign season. And Kamala did not disappoint. In her first White House campaign, she launched straight into the matter, a blistering critique of Donald Trump that left no stone unturned. Kamala Harris made it clear that this wasn't going to be just another campaign speech filled with empty promises and vague platitudes. No, this was personal. It was raw. It was about holding Donald Trump accountable for the years of chaos, corruption, and cruelty that have defined his public life. What made Harris's speech powerful was her decision to go straight for Trump's jugular. She didn't just criticize his policies, she attacked his character, his morality, and his fitness for office, and she had plenty of material to work with. Harris took aim at Trump's legal and ethical failures, laying out a case against him that would make even the most hardened Trump supporter squirm. Let's start with the facts. Donald Trump has been found guilty of sexual abuse. That's not political mudslinging. That's a legal reality. Kamala Harris didn't shy away from reminding the public of this inconvenient truth. She called out Trump's history of sexual misconduct, focusing on how he was found guilty of sexual abuse in a civil case involving E. Jean Carroll. She said,
As a prosecutor, I specialize in cases involving sexual abuse. Well, Trump was found liable for committing sexual abuse.
Harris pointed out that this is not the behavior of a leader, it's the behavior of a predator, and it's certainly not what the American people deserve in a president. But Harris didn't stop there. She also took Trump to task for his fraudulent business practices, zeroing in on the infamous Trump University scandal. Remember that? The so-called university that was supposed to teach students the secrets of real estate success, but ended up being a glorified scam. Kamala Harris made sure the public didn't forget.
As Attorney General of California, I took on one of our country's largest for-profit colleges that was...
She laid out how Trump's phony university defrauded thousands of students out of their hard-earned money, leaving them with nothing but worthless degrees and empty bank accounts. Kamala was quick to point out the irony of Trump's claims to be a champion of the working class, when in reality, he has consistently exploited the very people he claims to represent, whether it was scamming students with Trump University or refusing to pay contractors who worked on his properties. Trump's track record is clear. He's always been out for himself, no matter who gets hurt in the process. Harris argued that a man with such a record should never have been allowed near the Oval Office, let alone be given a second chance to run the country. But it wasn't just Trump's past that Harris aimed at. She also addressed the ongoing investigations and legal troubles that continue to swirl around him. From his attempts to overturn the 2020 election results to his shady financial dealings, Trump is buried deep in scandal after scandal, and Harris made it clear that this is not the kind of leadership America needs or deserves. She hammered home the point that Trump's legal troubles are not just a distraction. They are a symptom of a deeper moral rot that has infected his entire career. As Kamala spoke, it was impossible not to notice the differences she was drawing between herself and Trump. While he is buried in scandal and corruption, she presented herself as a candidate committed to ethical governance and transparency. Harris emphasized that her presidency would be about restoring trust in government, something that has been sorely lacking during the Trump years. In her speech, she said,
Building up the middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency, because I strongly believe when the middle class is strong, America is strong.
Vowing to bring integrity back to the White House and to ensure that the American people can once again have confidence in their leaders. Harris also laid out a series of policy proposals aimed at preventing future abuses of power. She talked about the importance of strengthening ethics rules for public officials and increasing transparency in government. She emphasized the need for stronger protections against conflicts of interest and for holding leaders accountable when they break the law. Harris made it clear that her administration would be focused on ensuring that the abuses of the Trump era could never happen again. In her speech, Kamala Harris didn't just critique Trump, she offered a vision for a better future. She spoke about the need to rebuild trust in government and to create a system where leaders are held accountable for their actions.
As president, I'll attack and take on the issue of the cost of health care.
Harris's message was clear. America deserves better than Donald Trump, and she is the candidate who can deliver the leadership and integrity the country so desperately needs. With her powerful speech, Kamala Harris not only exposed Trump's failures, but also set the tone for her campaign. Now let's take a look at the journey that has brought her to this pivotal moment as the Democratic presidential candidate and the challenges she faces from Trump's relentless smear campaign. Kamala Harris, the journey to becoming a presidential candidate. Kamala Harris's rise to the forefront of American politics is nothing short of remarkable. From her days as a young prosecutor to her historic role as the first woman and first person of color to be elected vice president, Harris has always been a force to be reckoned with. But as impressive as her career has been, what truly sets Kamala apart is her ability to stay grounded even as she climbs to the highest peaks of power. She's a political powerhouse with a human touch, someone who can take down opponents with her sharp wit and legal knowledge, yet still connect with everyday Americans. And now, as the Democratic Party's presidential candidate, Kamala Harris is ready to make history once again. Kamala's journey began in Oakland, California, where she was born to immigrant parents, a mother from India and a father from Jamaica. Growing up in the 1960s and 70s, Kamala witnessed firsthand the struggles of the civil rights movement, which left a great mark on her. Inspired by her mother, who was a renowned cancer researcher and activist, Kamala knew from an early age that she wanted to fight for justice. But before she could take on the big dogs in Washington, she had to cut her teeth in the courtroom. Kamala started her legal career as a prosecutor in Alameda County, California. Now, let's be honest, being a prosecutor is no easy gig. You're not exactly winning popularity contests when your job is to put people behind bars. But Kamala thrived in this role, quickly earning a reputation as a tough, no-nonsense attorney who wasn't afraid to take on the big cases. In 2003, she made her first major political move by running for district attorney of San Francisco. Now, this was a bold move. She was going up against an incumbent in a male-dominated field. But Kamala, with her trademark confidence and unyielding determination, won the election and became the first woman and the first person of color to hold the office. As San Francisco's DA, Kamala didn't just sit back and enjoy the view from the top. She got to work implementing progressive reforms while still maintaining a tough-on-crime stance. Her Back on Track program, which provided first-time drug offenders with the opportunity to avoid jail time by completing a rigorous job training and education program, was particularly groundbreaking. On creating the program, she said,
The vast majority of parents have a natural desire to parent their children well and love their children. But there are some who don't necessarily have the skills and the resources to do that. And so I designed Back on Track because sometimes folks just need the help.
This showed Kamala's ability to balance compassion with accountability, a theme that would define her career. By 2010, Kamala Harris was ready for her next challenge, running for Attorney General of California. Again, she was making history, this time as the first woman and first person of color to be elected to the position. As AG, Kamala took on some of the biggest cases in the state's history, including securing a $25 billion settlement for California homeowners after the mortgage crisis. She also fought against human trafficking, worked to improve the state's criminal justice system, and was a fierce advocate for environmental protection. But perhaps one of her most high-profile battles was against the powerful for-profit college industry. Kamala Harris didn't just take on the industry, she dismantled it. She secured a $1.1 billion judgment against Corinthian Colleges, a company that had scammed thousands of students out of their money. It was a victory that cemented her reputation as a fearless advocate for justice. With a resume like that, it was only a matter of time before Kamala's name started circulating on the national stage. In 2016, she would...
See, now this is an example of how Vice President Harris has always worked for the people as an attorney, as an attorney general, and just as a lawyer and as vice president.
Elected to the U.S. Senate, where she quickly made a name for herself as a tough interrogator during Senate hearings. Her grilling of then Attorney General Jeff Sessions during the Russia investigation became the stuff of legends. Sessions, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world at that moment, famously said,
I'm not able to be rushed this fast. It makes me nervous.
If you're making a seasoned politician like Sessions sweat bullets, you're doing something right. As a senator, Kamala continued her work on criminal justice reform, immigration, and health care. But her star really began to rise during the 2020 Democratic primaries. While her presidential campaign ultimately didn't go the distance, Kamala's performances on the debate stage were unforgettable.
Americans, but the LGBT community.
But Vice President Biden, do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America?
Who could forget that time she took Joe Biden to task over his past stance on busing, all while doing it with a smile that said, "No hard feelings, Joe, but I'm going to roast you now." It was a moment that showed Kamala's ability to mix toughness with charisma, a combination that made her an obvious choice when Biden was looking for a running mate. Kamala Harris's selection as Joe Biden's running mate was historically significant as she became the first woman and person of color nominated for vice president by a major party. Her energy, diversity, and commitment to justice played a crucial role in energizing voters and securing a victory in the contentious 2020 election. As vice president, Kamala has been instrumental in tackling the COVID-19 pandemic, driving economic recovery, and addressing systemic racism. She's proven to be an active leader, not just a ceremonial figurehead, taking on significant responsibilities and challenges. Despite facing criticism, Kamala has shown resilience and determination throughout her career. Now, as the Democratic presidential candidate, she is ready to take on her biggest challenge, defeating Donald Trump. Kamala Harris's rise to prominence has been nothing short of amazing, but with that success has come a relentless campaign of attacks from her political opponents. And if there's one thing Donald Trump is known for, besides his questionable spray tan and love of fast food, it's his ability to launch a relentless smear campaign against his opponents. And when it comes to Kamala Harris, Trump has been at it with all the subtlety of a bull in a china shop. From the moment Harris stepped into the national spotlight, Trump and his allies have been scrambling to discredit her. But as much as they try, Kamala just keeps on shining, proving that she's not just tough, she's practically unbreakable. Let's rewind to the 2020 election, shall we? Kamala Harris was announced as Joe Biden's running mate, and within seconds, the Trump machine went into overdrive. Trump's first line of attack? Questioning her eligibility to be vice president. Yes, that's right, Trump, who's notorious for promoting the baseless birther conspiracy against Barack Obama, tried to pull the same stunt with Harris. He hinted that Harris might not be a natural-born citizen because her parents were immigrants. Never mind that she was born in Oakland, California, which, last time anyone checked, is still part of the United States. The fact that Trump was even floating this idea was enough to make anyone's eyes roll, but Trump didn't stop there. Oh no, he kept digging. During a rally in Pennsylvania, Trump unleashed a tirade of insults, calling Kamala Harris everything from extraordinarily nasty to a monster, and just for good measure, a madwoman. He went on to say,
and I thought she was the meanest, the most horrible, most disrespectful of anybody in the U.S. Senate.
Watching him go all the way out on her was the kind of performance that made you wonder if Trump's speechwriters were just drawing words out of a hat at this point. The irony, of course, is that while Trump was busy throwing juvenile insults, Harris was busy, doing her job. As vice president, she was tackling real issues like the pandemic, the economy, and voting rights, while Trump was still ranting on stage like a stand-up comedian who'd lost his script. And then there was the time Trump called Harris a radical leftist lunatic. This was rich coming from a guy who's known for his extreme positions and who's surrounded himself with a rogues gallery of political extremists. Trump and his team spent months trying to convince voters that Harris was going to turn America into a socialist dystopia where everyone would be forced to listen to NPR and eat kale. The reality, of course, is that Kamala Harris is a practical, centrist politician who has spent her career finding common ground and getting things done. But that didn't stop Trump from labeling her as a crazy liberal, a claim so out of touch that it's almost laughable. One of the more desperate attempts to undermine Kamala came from Trump's allies, who went on a full-court press to question her likability and authenticity. They tried to paint her as a cold, calculating politician who couldn't connect with voters. Trump even went as far as to make fun of her laugh, saying,
For nearly 4 years, Kamala has crackled as the American economy has burned. What happened to her laugh? I haven't heard that laugh in about a week. That's why they keep her off the stage. That's why she's disappeared. That's the laugh of a crazy person, I will tell you.
Never mind that.
And what the hell does that have to do with policies and things that affect the American people? Nothing. Idiot.
Harris has a smile that could light up a room and a downright infectious laugh. Trump's team even attempted to portray her as unpatriotic. Remember that time Ronna McDaniel, the former chairperson of the Republican National Committee, claimed Harris laughed at the idea of visiting the border? Never mind that Harris has been a strong advocate for immigration reform and has been working tirelessly to address the root causes of migration. But hey, why let facts get in the way of a good smear campaign, right? Of course, the attacks didn't just come from Trump himself. His allies in the media and his supporters on social media were more than happy to pile on. Harris was subjected to a barrage of sexist and racist attacks, with critics questioning everything from her heritage to her qualifications. At one point, Fox News host Tucker Carlson couldn't even be bothered to learn how to pronounce her name correctly.
Just tell Kamala Harris what to say, and she will say it. That is the whole point of Kamala Harris.
Tucker, can I just say one quick thing, because this is something that will serve you and your fellow hosts on Fox. Her name is pronounced comma, like the punctuation mark la, Kamala. Okay? Seriously, I've heard every sort of bastardization.
So what?
That's how it is, Kamala.
It's Kamala, not Kamala, Tucker. But I suppose expecting attention to detail from the same guy who once claimed that wind turbines cause cancer is a bit much. And let's not forget the infamous moment when Trump's campaign thought it would be a good idea to label her as a third-rate phony candidate. The name didn't exactly catch on, probably because it's hard to paint someone as phony when they're known for being brutally honest and direct. Kamala Harris doesn't mince words, and she certainly doesn't pretend to be someone she's not. In fact, that's one of the reasons she's so popular. People know that what you see is what you get with Kamala. She's authentic, she's real, and she's not afraid to call it like she sees it. But Harris hasn't just ignored Trump's attacks. She's hit back with the kind of sharp wit that makes her one of the most formidable debaters in politics today. Take, for example, the time she was asked about Trump's constant insults. Instead of getting defensive, Kamala simply responded, "Donald Trump has been resorting to some wild lies about my record, and some of what he and his running mate are saying, well, it's just plain weird." That's Kamala in a nutshell, unbothered by the noise and laser-focused on getting things done. Kamala Harris's response to Trump's attacks has been nothing short of masterful. She hasn't allowed herself to be dragged down into the mud. Instead, she's kept her eye on the prize, winning the election and continuing to fight for the American people. While Trump continues to hurl insults from the sidelines, Kamala is out there making a difference, working tirelessly to build a better future for all Americans. And let's be real, if Trump's best shot at taking down Kamala Harris is by calling her names and questioning her authenticity, then he's in big trouble. Kamala has faced tougher challenges before, and she's come out on top every time. Trump's smear campaign may have rallied his base, but it hasn't dented Kamala's resolve. In fact, it's only made her stronger, because at the end of the day, Kamala Harris is more than just a political opponent. She's a force of nature, and she's not going anywhere. As Kamala Harris navigates the attacks from Trump and his allies, it's worth reflecting on how her tenure, alongside Joe Biden, stacks up against Trump's years in office. Let's compare their records and see how the Biden-Harris administration's accomplishments contrast with Trump's chaotic presidency. Comparing tenures, Harris and Biden versus Trump. Let's get into the ultimate showdown. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. It's like comparing a gourmet meal to a fast food burger. Sure, some folks might have a taste for the greasy stuff, but when it comes to substance, there's really no contest. Biden and Harris have spent their time in office focused on delivering real results for the American people, while Trump's presidency often felt like a reality TV show gone off the rails. So, let's take a look at how these two administrations stack up against each other. First up, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or rather, the virus. When Biden and Harris took office in January 2021, the country was in the middle of the worst pandemic in over a century. COVID-19 had already claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, and the vaccine rollout was just getting started. Trump had spent much of the previous year downplaying the virus, spreading misinformation, and let's be honest, looking like he'd rather be golfing than dealing with the crisis. Remember the time he suggested injecting disinfectant as a treatment? Yeah, not exactly the leadership we needed.
Yeah, that was a very, very, very extremely stupid idea. I was like, what the hell's wrong with this man?
In contrast, Biden and Harris hit the ground running with a comprehensive plan to get vaccines into arms and bring the pandemic under control. They set an ambitious goal of administering 100 million shots in their first 100 days in office, and then doubled it. By the time those 100 days were up, More than 200 million doses had been administered. Not too shabby, right? Under their leadership, vaccines became widely available, and the country began to slowly but surely emerge from the pandemic. Of course, it hasn't been easy, and the fight against COVID-19 is far from over, but Biden and Harris have approached the challenge with the seriousness and competence that the moment demanded. Now let's switch gears and talk about the economy. When Trump was in office, he liked to brag about the stock market and job numbers, until, of course, the pandemic hit and everything went south. Trump's presidency saw some economic growth, particularly in the early years, but it was...
Yeah, particularly in the early years, because that is when he inherited the economic situation from President Obama.
Largely built on a house of cards. His signature achievement, the 2017 tax cuts, was a windfall for the wealthy and corporations, while doing little to nothing for the average American. In fact, the national debt ballooned under Trump, and the benefits of his economic policies were unevenly distributed, to say the least. Enter Biden and Harris, who inherited an economy in shambles. But instead of just trying to patch things up and call it a day, they set out to rebuild the economy in a way that works for everyone. The American Rescue Plan, passed in March 2021, was a massive $1.9 trillion package aimed at providing relief to those hardest hit by the pandemic. It included direct payments to Americans, extended unemployment benefits, and funding for vaccine distribution in small businesses. Critics might have called it too ambitious, but the results speak for themselves. Millions of Americans lifted out of poverty, unemployment rates plummeting, and a stronger safety net for those who need it most. But Biden and Harris didn't stop there. They've been hard at work on the infrastructure front, with the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law in November 2021. This $1.2 trillion investment is set to rebuild America's crumbling roads, bridges, and public transit systems, expand broadband access, and tackle climate change by investing in clean energy. Compare that to Trump, who spent 4 years talking about Infrastructure Week, but never quite managed to get anything off the ground. It's almost like Biden and Harris took Trump's empty promises and turned them into actual, tangible progress. Imagine that. The difference between the Trump and Biden-Harris administrations is quite obvious, particularly on climate change, democracy, and immigration. Trump rolled back environmental protections, withdrew from the Paris Agreement, and promoted fossil fuels, harming the planet. In contrast, Biden-Harris made climate change a priority, rejoining the Paris Agreement, setting ambitious emission goals, and passing the Inflation Reduction Act to invest in clean energy. Regarding democracy, Trump undermined democratic norms, spread false election claims, and incited an insurrection. Biden-Harris prioritized protecting democracy, supporting voting rights legislation, and restoring trust in government institutions. On immigration, Trump's policies were characterized by cruelty and division, such as family separations, segregation of marginalized communities, and the Muslim ban. Biden-Harris aimed to restore fairness, ending the Muslim ban, halting the border wall, and reuniting separated families. Finally, while Trump's presidency was chaotic and filled with a lot of scandals and drama to rival a telenovela, Biden-Harris have brought calm, competence, and a focus on effective governance back to the White House. As we look ahead to the next election, the choice couldn't be clearer. On one hand, we have a team that's committed to progress, unity, and making life better for all Americans. On the other, we have a former president who spent 4 years dividing the country and leaving chaos in his wake. The Biden-Harris administration has proven that they have what it takes to lead, and Kamala Harris in particular has shown that she's ready to take the reins and continue the work of building a better, more just America. As the 2024 election heats up, Kamala Harris is making it abundantly clear that her vision for the future is about more than just picking up where Biden leaves off. It's about taking the progress made under the Biden administration and turbocharging it into a new era of prosperity, equity, and opportunity for all Americans. While Donald Trump is busy trying to revive the past, complete with all the drama, chaos, and greatness that worked out so well for him the first time, Harris is focused on moving the country forward with a bold, forward-looking agenda that addresses the real challenges of today and tomorrow. At the heart of Kamala Harris's vision for the future is an economic agenda that prioritizes the needs of working families over the interests of the wealthy elite. Let's be honest, under Trump, the economy might have looked good on paper if you were checking the stock market or asking a billionaire how they were doing. But for everyday Americans, The so-called Trump economy was a mixed bag at best. Wages stagnated, income inequality soared, and those tax cuts that were supposed to benefit everyone? They mostly fattened the wallets of the top 1%. Harris knows that to build a truly strong economy, you have to start with the people who actually keep the wheels turning. Workers, small business owners, and families just trying to make ends meet. Harris's economic plan focuses on ensuring shared prosperity through raising the minimum wage, expanding access to affordable health care, and investing in education and job training. She is committed to closing the racial wealth gap and creating equitable opportunities for marginalized communities. Her vision includes preparing for future challenges by investing in infrastructure, clean energy, and technology to build a sustainable economy with millions of good-paying jobs. Harris supports expanding the Affordable Care Act and working toward universal health care, believing health care is a right. She is also dedicated to protecting democracy by expanding voting rights and supporting reforms like the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Harris is committed to social justice, advocating for criminal justice reform, LGBTQ+ rights, women's rights, and immigrant rights. In foreign policy, Harris emphasizes diplomacy, multilateralism, and rebuilding alliances to address global challenges. Lastly, Harris is focused on the future of work, protecting workers' rights, and ensuring inclusivity in the evolving job market. As we look ahead to a potential Harris presidency, it's clear that she's not just thinking about the next 4 years. She's thinking about the next generation. Harris's vision is one of progress, where the government actually works for the people, where the economy is strong because it's fair, and where the future is bright because we're prepared for it. While Trump pines for the past and relives his greatest hits from the 2016 campaign trail, Harris is focused on building a better future for all Americans, one that's inclusive, just, and filled with opportunity. Harris's presidency would continue and expand the progress made under Biden, but it would also bring a fresh perspective and a renewed energy to the challenges we face. With her experience, determination, and vision, Kamala Harris is ready to lead the country into a new era, one where the American dream is within reach for everyone, not just a select few. And that, my friends, is a future worth fighting for. Did you enjoy?
As a matter of fact, if any citizen is convicted of a felony, they are not eligible to work in certain areas of the federal government. And if a military member is convicted of a felony, they are subject to loss of pay, discharge, and prison. It is absolutely ridiculous that the government is allowing a person convicted of numerous felonies to actually run for president of the United States and be the commander-in-chief of our military. Although it is too late for the 2024 election, I believe the Constitution badly needs an amendment that effectively states that anyone with a criminal record is barred from seeking the office of president because, as it currently stands, anyone can seek the awful office. There are no stated education requirements or background checks that need to be performed, and that results in a lack of quality control in who lands the position in the White House. Thank you for watching.